I'm Sean Mims, ServiceTrade's Vice President of Marketing, and I started in this industry over 14 years ago as a technician. And for the past 12 years, coming on 13 years now, I've been part of the ServiceTrade team creating solutions and data-driven strategies that have helped over 1,300 commercial and industrial contractors grow their businesses. Joining me today from the ServiceTrade team is Jordan Winfield. Jordan, mind sharing a little about yourself?
Absolutely. My name is Jordan Winfield. I've been with ServiceTrade for about a year and a half now, just connecting customers and prospects to with ServiceTrade and how they can grow their business utilizing the platform. And I work directly with the product marketing team to make sure we are addressing those things to help you grow your business.
Thanks, Jordan. All right, today we are so very excited to share with you the latest version of the ServiceTrade Commercial Mechanical Service Industry Benchmark Report that has some really interesting new insights. And it's going to, in the webinar today, we're going to break out the metrics by company size, so small, mid-size, and enterprise, so you can get a better sense of benchmarks based on the size of your organization. But first, a quick warning. This is your friendly reminder why it is so very important to rely on comparative industry benchmarks like those found in this report. Feelings fool and data rules. Repeatable scientific studies show us that it is human nature for us to feel like we are above average. And for our businesses, that is dangerous. That's how you get caught flat-footed in a competitive market like commercial mechanical contracting. That's why you need to rely on data to guide your understanding of your business's performance. So speaking of data, this benchmark report was pulled together using an incredible wealth of information. Data from over 1,300 active ServiceTrade accounts was analyzed. So these contractors have over 13 million assets under management in roughly 10% of the commercial and industrial facilities in the U.S., and they invoiced for over $7.5 billion in revenue in the trailing 12 months. So for this benchmark report, you're going to see that it covers a time frame from August 1st, 2023 through July 31st of 2024. First benchmark we're going to review is year-over-year revenue growth. Note, this benchmark does look back an extra trailing 12 months preceding this period because it is a year-over-year measure to ensure that we account for seasonality. So it requires full 2 years of data. Next, you're going to see on-time completion rate, which is the percentage of work orders or jobs where your last appointment where a technician was on site was in the defined service due window. So generally, this is a good measure of how well you're meeting your internal or customer SLAs, whether it's tight turnaround for a service call, emergency service call, or broader SLA for whole month-long window to get some of that preventative maintenance work done. The next benchmark you'll see is pull-through work rate, which is a measure of your ability to pull work through like repairs and retrofits from your existing customer relationships and contracts. And finally, days to invoice, which is the number of days between your last appointment where a technician was on site and the first invoice. This is a good measure of how buttoned up your company is when it comes to closing out work orders and getting the bill out the door. Now, before I show you what is arguably the most important benchmark of all, year-over-year revenue growth, let me show you how the data will be presented so that you can find the benchmark data points that matter most to you. So for each benchmark, you'll see a table like this. On the left side, you'll find your company size based on the number of service techs. So the small business category represents organizations in the range of 1 to 10 technicians. Mid-sized organizations go up to around 25 techs. And enterprise organizations cover a large range up to hundreds of technicians. And at the bottom, you'll see the industry total. That just aggregates all of the accounts regardless of company size. So it's a kind of total overall view of the mechanical market. At the top of the table, you'll find performance levels that correspond to the bottom and top quartiles, and in the middle, the median. So if your company is performing at or above the value in the middle column, that means you are performing better than 50% of the other companies of your peers in your industry. If your company is performing at or above the value on the right column, that means that you are a top performer and doing better than 75% of the other companies in your industry. So let's take a look at the data. I'll pause here so you can digest it just a little bit. So on average, we see here in bottom kind of middle column, we see that mechanical contractors using ServiceTrade are growing their revenue around 12% per year, which is incredible. I'll pause here for a moment so you can digest a little bit more. What's really incredible here is that top performers are growing revenue over 30%, on the small side, close to 50% year over year, despite the skilled labor shortage that is plaguing this industry. So this begs the question, what the hell are these companies doing to grow so quickly despite some of the macroeconomic headwinds facing your companies? I mean, these companies are growing nearly 2.5 times faster than the median because of how they operate. And this bar chart on the right, which is just a different view of that same total market data we saw, kind of really puts this into perspective. So, what does the data tell us about how these companies operate that helps them grow so quickly? First, these companies prioritize value over volume. In other words, instead of focusing on things like work order volume, how many work orders can they get done every single week, every single month, they prioritize dollars per day to ensure that every tech generates as much revenue as possible. Next, these companies do more proactive repair work. This one's pretty simple. The data shows us the more repair work, that more repair work is correlated with faster growth. And finally, the fastest growing companies have more cash to invest in growing the business because they have faster customer-friendly billing processes and therefore collect more quickly. So I'm going to dive into each one of these, value over volume, more proactive repairs, and accelerating cash flow by starting with on-time completion rate, which again is that measure of the percent of work orders, maintenance, repair, service calls that are completed when they are due. So the median across the entire industry right now, mechanical industry, is around 77%. I'll pause here for just a second so you can digest this. Top performers, typically in the mid to high 80s, with the market total being around 85% of the work being delivered on time. A word of caution here, though. Above a certain point, the data shows that improving your on-time rate is actually counterproductive. More specifically, companies with an on-time rate between 60 and 90% grew 1 times faster than the companies that fall outside that range. So you've got kind of a Goldilocks zone there. And there's a couple reasons for this. First, the companies that can get to a very, very high percentage of their work and are exceeding that 90%, on time rate, well, they just don't have enough high value work to keep their techs busy and productive, right? And companies below that 60% band, delivering a low rate, low on time rate, are just likely losing customers because they're not getting to all of the work they need to get to, and it's delivering a poor customer experience and misaligned with their customers' expectations. Now, 60-90% on-time rate is a very huge band, right? And it's outside of even the bottom and top performer threshold, but there are still quite a few companies that fall outside that range. And the data from those companies shows us how important it is that we optimize on-time rate as opposed to trying to overachieve on this particular benchmark. So to do this, there are some very clear actions your company can take. First, this should be pretty obvious, right? It's critical that you fully utilize your most scarce resource, your technicians. Next, and more importantly, the work for those techs should be prioritized by revenue or value as opposed to volume. So value over volume. And finally, to ensure that your team is doing a good job prioritizing the work based on revenue, they should be targeting and should be managed to specific dollars per day goals. So to show you exactly how you can do that, I'm going to pass it over to Jordan to show you some of the best practices in ServiceTrade.
Absolutely. So, excuse me, to handle this and achieve that volume, that value over volume of on-time completion rate, and obviously optimizing our technicians, we've had jumped directly to our map-based scheduling view. That's what you're looking at. And the first call out that you can clearly see is the map and just being able to see where are my jobs located in regards to the location that I'm, handling as a dispatcher, and then also where my technicians are. The reason that becomes very important is I'm able to cut down when it comes windshield time of knowing when available jobs are coming available, when emergency work may pop up, or just the simple fact of where do I know where my technicians are located in reference to, in this case, South Florida. If you're familiar, South Beach, we love that area. So that's what you have. The second part our technicians are handling this is through our tags and filters. Now, we understand that sometimes your high value customers may not be also just a high revenue section of your business. And where you're able to do that is taking, instead of looking at 100 jobs, 200 jobs, 300 jobs at a time for a scheduler, that can be very overwhelming. You're able to use these tags, whether it's maybe your tier A or your tier B tags, and look at those in little bite sizes to break them down. So instead of looking at 300 jobs, I'm gonna look at my tier A customers or tier A jobs and be able to prioritize them, whether it's based off of revenue or just prioritizing that customer. The other part that I mentioned was the revenue. We also do have a piece where it says, I want to see things by estimated price. So being able to set up your recurring services ahead of time, and putting these on the schedule so your technicians are looking forward to, hey, knowing what's upcoming. You're also being able to know, hey, how much revenue do I potentially am going to be getting from this work order, from this preventative maintenance, from this planned maintenance, from this repair, because ultimately, as Sean mentioned, that is how you continue to grow your business. But that's all great. The last part is your technicians. They're scared resource, the skilled labor shortage. Down here is our capacity tracker. Now, the way I'm able to have this data in here is based off of setting up recurring services and opportunities and putting my technicians on there ahead of time. So I kind of get a lay of the land for my upcoming month. So here in Central New York, as well as North Carolina, the two areas that I'm going to be managing, I can clearly see, hey, what are my dispatchers, what are my techs capacity is. Being able to see red, bright red, meaning we're underutilizing or over, in that yellow tone takes my eyes directly to that to be able to alert me to figure out why is there a discrepancy. To go a little bit further into seeing where this information can take you, I'm going to pass it back over to Sean, and he has some reports that can go a little bit deeper into that.
Thanks, Jordan. Yeah, so I want to show you some reporting in addition to kind of schedule and dispatch view that can help you hit those dollar per day targets and kind of reinsure that you're hitting that in full tech utilization. So what we're looking at here is a dashboard, business analytics dashboard that reports on the number of dollars per day per division that we see in the coming week so that we can get a look at and make sure that we're scheduling as much work as we need to. It could be division or office, however you want to parse it. And down here in this table, we can dive into any of those divisions to understand what's happening on a per tech or per coordinator, scheduler, dispatcher level and see, are we hitting our dollars per day targets? What's going on with Emily Clark here? It's in red. She's only hitting 1478. We're shooting for $3,000 or $3,500. Oh, well, she's only booked for 5 hours. Well, let's figure out if we can get her 3 more hours of work. That gets her over to our target. Then we can, after the fact, look at the actual revenue per day, say of last week. How did our divisions do? We can compare actuals to estimated. Where were there differences in what we thought was going to happen versus what we actually build? When we drill down at that per tech level, can we again look at Emily and see, hey, look, last week she was over and we exceeded our revenue goal there. But what happened on the 17th? And we can take a look at how much time did they actually spend on site. We're shooting for this green line of around 36 hours of on-time clocked in time. But Rachel here was working for 50 hours. What's going on? And we can dive into windshield time based on how much time they're clocking in route. Division 4 is way over our goal of 15% of time spent on the road. What's going on in Division 4? Well, let's drill down and understand what's happening on a per tech level. What is happening here? Why do Jessica White and Sophia Thompson and Natalie Reed and Bob Jordan all have significant amounts of windshield time? Something's going on here that we need to get underneath and understand in terms of how we're coordinating our technicians' schedules. Because we've got to optimize for the tech and the amount of revenue they're producing for our organization. All right, let's move on to our next benchmark, pull-through work rate. Note that the numbers that I'm going to show you in this data today are based on the quantity of work orders and not on a dollar basis. So we're looking at pull-through work rate as a work order percentage, not a dollar percentage. I would expect folks' repair revenue as a percentage of their business to be much higher than the numbers I'm going to show today. But again, this is a quantity basis. So that context in mind, the median pull-through rate is right around 14%, meaning that in a given commercial mechanical service organization, we're looking at the service side, that 14% of the work orders are repair or retrofit work pulled through from other work with that customer, typically PM work. And top performers are pulling through around 21% of their work orders as proactive repair work. So top performers are pulling through 50% more work than the median contractor and almost 3 times as much as the bottom performers. And this is high margin, high revenue work. And what the data tells us is that the contractors that are above that median pull-through rate of around 14% are growing 1.23 times faster than their peers. And then the top performers are growing even faster than that. So the data shows us that there are some key actions that you can take to boost your pull-through rate. So contractors that find more deficiencies or equipment issues earn more pull-through work. It's pretty obvious on the face of it. But the real challenge here is when it comes to operationalizing it in a way that makes it, one, really easy for your techs to identify those deficiencies in the first place, and then to log them very quickly in a way that makes it easy for the office to act on. Next, companies that turn quotes around faster win more repair work. General advice here is if you can turn that quote around to the customer in less than 24 to 48 hours, your quote approval rate goes up. And finally, you've got to make it easy for the customer to say yes. So what do I mean by that? Well, data shows that you can significantly increase your quote approval rates if you include 3 to 5 attachments like videos or images so that the customer actually understands the value of the work you're trying to deliver and they understand the problem you're trying to fix for them. 2, you can follow up with the customer up to 15 times before it will start having a diminishing return on your approval rate increases. And then finally, giving your customers a way to approve quotes online with the click of a button. So all 3 of those things, 3 to 5 attachments, following up to 15 times, and making it easy with click of a button approval will boost your repair quote approval rate. So to show you exactly how you can do this, I'm going to pass it over to Jordan to show you some of those best practices in ServiceTrade.
So to handle these best practices and obviously to empower your technicians to find more work, to be proactive and be customer centric, we have jumped directly into a job within the mobile app. So your technicians within ServiceTrade will be able to see this. And there's a couple things that I'm going to touch on, but the main thing is in this bottom right-hand corner is tasking. Tasking is something that we has recently launched for our mechanical contractors, allowing them to have that checklist, but also being able to provide a PDF to your customers of what was actually done. I'm speaking with a lot of them. That's something they do want to know. But kind of give a lay of the land of the mobile application. You have your services, you have those attachments. As Sean mentioned, we want to have 3 to 5. And that's where you can not only take pictures, videos, you can even do voice memos that allows you a technician to basically describe in real time exactly what's going on, what they're seeing with their eyes. And if they wanted to give a video to give you a visual, you have that. That just cuts down not only what they need to remember, but also able to speed up that process when we do find those deficiencies or repair opportunities through our tasking checklist, to get that quote out within the next 24 to 48 hours. Speaking of tasking, very simply, you have your task list that is going to be populated onto the job when the technician is ready. These task sheets can be quarterly, monthly, biannually, or annually. You can set those up within ServiceTrade. And as you see here, I've kind of already started answering these just due to time. But in the top right-hand corner, you see this blue circle. That's going to start to fill up or be completed as the technician is filling through their responses. And as you see, I have a good variety of multiple choice, fill in the blank, check boxes, and I can simply just go through and check these anything. If you notice, that box is now green. But as I mentioned, we want them to be proactive. They can quickly come in here and let's say they did find a issue or opportunity. They would come here and just simply describe it. And leaking, save. They're able to add those 3 pictures very quickly. So this is something I'm actually just going to add 4 because we want to add those. And you can take these pictures directly from your camera roll, from your video. You assign the status of this being something brand new. And then if there is a proposed solution, a lot of my technicians that I spoke with just says, customer discuss options. And severity, this is not. And just that quickly, that not only is the task list completed, but now you in the office can now go in and start to work on this quote, which is where we're about to jump to now. So the technician has completed, they're done. And now as a service manager who's handling those deficiencies are going to be able to see what's going on. But first, our soon to be coming dashboard is something that you can use as a service manager to view your analytics from your day-to-day. And one of those action tiles is our quoting deficiencies or open deficiencies. So as you see this number tick up, that means your technicians are finding repair work, and you can now go ahead and get these quotes out, and let's see how that's done. You're going to be brought to this blank quote template or quote page, excuse me, where there's really no description. You see the service and the repair opportunities, and we want to get these out quickly. And how can we be efficient with that? We're going to highlight our quote templates, which you can actually build out yourself. But I have a compressor repair. As you can see, I quickly have my parts, labor already done. Add those in with the description and what's needed. In just a click of a button, very seamlessly, you have everything that's needed for your customer to see or know while we're sending you out this repair. I will go ahead and send this out. And now you have your beautiful quote. This is what your customers now be receiving via email. You have your description. These detailed customer level is up to you. We have a plethora of them. But the last call out is we have an approve and request change, allowing your customers to immediately approve this so you can then send your technicians, maybe it's the same day or a later date, utilizing that capacity tracker, knowing when their availability can be to go ahead and do that work. But also request change by not allowing them to say no, but partnering with them to see why is or where's the issue or where's a disconnect for reasons we need to continue negotiate and making sure we get the work done. Because at the end of the day, we want to make sure our customers are happy. So now I'm going to pass it back to Sean to continue.
Thanks, Jordan. All right. So Jordan showed you how to make it easy to find more deficiencies in the field with tech because they are right in the middle of their tasking, maintenance task workflow. They can report that equipment issue. Two, making it fast and easy for the office to catch those issues, turn around into quotes with quote templates, put them in your customer's hand, and then making it very easy for the customer to say yes by giving them that online interface with all those pictures. There's ways to set up automated reminders such that follow up with the customer automatically. The last step in this journey is for you to be able to manage that entire pipeline. So what I'm showing right now is a Boost Revenue Analytics dashboard, similar to that dashboard I showed you, the reporting I showed you just a little bit ago with tracking dollars per day and tech utilization. But this dashboard and reporting is focused entirely on boosting revenue in your business. There's a lot of different ways that it can help you do that in terms of understanding where your revenue is coming from in terms of various sources and job types, tracking that over time, with whom or which customers you have our biggest open quotes. But what I want to focus in on this dashboard are these three speedometer looking things here. So work orders with repair opportunities. How frequently, when we send technicians out, are we finding opportunities for repair work? So if in this case, 32% of the time we send our techs out on maintenance work, service calls, we find opportunities for pull-through work. How often are those getting turned into quotes? Only 12%. That seems awfully low. Finally, what is our quote approval rate? Should it be higher? Should it be lower? Generally, we see the median is around 66% on quote approval rate. So this is a relatively high quote approval rate. Next, you can drill into specifics as it relates to your sales users, your salespeople, and understand. So we've got it anonymized for this particular case, but user ID, which could just be Sean Mims or Jordan Winfield, has submitted this many quotes in this period of time, how many they have in the draft state, how many have been accepted, and how many have been viewed by the customer, and really understanding what's going on with your pipeline so you can drive that high value deficiency repair work to help you grow faster. You can get into reporting that shows you how many deficiencies or equipment issues are your technicians identifying. And then down here at the bottom, we have some really cool visualizations that break out. In this case, it breaks out who your biggest customers are in terms of the size of the boxes here represent how much revenue they've generated in this time period. In this case, we're looking at 12 months. And the shading color helps you understand the margin. So in this case, this customer is about 5 million worth of revenue, and they have a margin of 71%. And by clicking a given customer, we can filter this entire dashboard down to understand what's going on at this customer. What does the breakout of our revenue look like? What does our quote pipeline look like? So we can really drill in and start to understand for our biggest customers, what's moving the needle? Are we getting the quote approval rates we're expecting? With this customer, we definitely are. Okay, let's move on to our next benchmark, days to invoice. So again, this is a measure of calendar days between the last appointment on that work order and the date of the first invoice. Note, this is not a measure of how long it takes you to collect from your customers, simply a measure of how long it takes to get a bill out the door. So here you can see the median is around 10 days across the industry. So I'll pause here for a moment so you can consume this and find your company's benchmark. Now, depending on company size, top performers are getting invoices out in about half the time as the median performers. So it's important to note here that beyond the cash flow impact of improving days to invoice, that positive impact you can have on your business, this is just a good overall measure of your billing efficiency. Companies that bill faster typically have lower administrative costs associated with billing because they have better systems in place. So there was one unfortunate trend we found in the data when we looked at it over time. And it's that on average, compared to last year, commercial contractors are billing around 20% slower. So there are a lot of kind of macroeconomic factors at play here, making it more difficult for you to get invoices out the door quickly, and that hurts your cash flow. But there are some actions that you can take to beat that trend. So first, one best practices we see out there is to pre-bill whenever possible, especially with proactive work like your maintenance work and your repairs, where you already roughly know what the payment should be. Go ahead and collect ahead of time. Second, in order to really streamline your billing processes, it is absolutely critical that you automate your pricing contracts so that it doesn't, it's not some process that requires billers to find a price book, pull the price book off the shelf or some digital price booking and manually look up special pricing for every single customer. Finally, again, you should prioritize value over volume by invoicing your highest revenue work first. Now, that won't necessarily improve this particular measure, right? Days to invoice, but it will help with cash flow. So to show you some how you can optimize your billing processes, I'm going to pass it over to Jordan again to show you some of these best practices in ServiceTrade.
And as we've made it to the point where we all like of just collecting due for the work that we've put in. So I'm at this job that I was just previously at, and we're getting ready to invoice. I do want to call out is if you see at the top hand again, making sure we're having that volume over volume and making sure we're prioritizing those customers so we know who to go after. As I mentioned, not only can you use the tags when it comes to scheduling and figuring out who should we go out there first and how do we prioritize, this also can apply to the days of invoice as Sean has described of how can we cut down that time, how can we work on pre-billing as well as automating pricing contracts. So completely just going to complete the job, create the invoice. As you can see here, I now have my contract, which will now automatically apply those pricing markups. Maybe you have some labor costs that you have, whatever those is, and those net 30, net 45 terms that you're using will apply. We're now going from not only days to invoice, we're going to be transitioning to days to collect. And as Sean said, wasn't in the benchmark, but this is what you would simply do. Create that invoice, pull up this beautiful screen with our invoice. You have your pricing. I have the ability to break this down for detailed. We're going to do grand total only for this customer. And we're going to go ahead and send the invoice. I have my margins. And we're going to preview. Very similar to the quote when it comes to the UI side. You have your logo, the invoice number, and who you're sending to. But instead of an approve or change, I have this pay now. We'll allow your customers to pay directly through ServiceTrade to make this process easier and seamless due to not going into any other third-party thing. You can come here, play with credit card or ACH, and you can set up your limits and parameters for that accordingly. But the one call I do want to talk about is this blue arrow, excuse me. This is your service detail. Customers always want to know, why is this price? What do we do? Especially when you just had grand total. Sending them this link before or after, completely up to you, gives them the story behind why the charge is the way it is. Hopefully this eases them to say yes to that button, because doing that pull through, getting them to say yes is something that we want to do to help with this. So this is going to highlight your appointment, the service. You can have your parts and labor. Even if you can include that checklist so they can actually get that task list of all the things that were done at this particular visit. And even more importantly, they can follow the technician through their work process. So every time something is found from a technician, they can get a notification and see this in real time. So this is another element of customer success and customer communication that we have for you to make sure the customer's ease of use, but also allow you to be a little more efficient on the office, as well as the technician not being stopped to answer 3 or 4 different questions at a time.
Yeah, this is one of those areas where we've received a lot of feedback that this level of visibility and customer experience has ultimately reduced the slog of chasing payment, right? You're always going to be chasing some degree of payments, but when your customers have really good visibility to the work you're delivering, there are a lot fewer questions that have them hesitate. and they just go ahead and pay.
There you go, Sean.
Thanks, Jordan. All right. So if you want to grow as fast as the top performing mechanical contractors in your market, over 30% year over year, the data in this benchmark study shows us that there are a few key actions your company can take. Right. First, schedule value over volume. Hit that Goldilocks zone, very big Goldilocks zones, but hit that Goldilocks zones with intention for on-time completion rate to grow 1.5 times faster by targeting those daily revenue goals to maximize productivity for each of your technicians. Next, pull through more than 14% of your work orders as repair and retrofit work to grow 1.23 times faster by streamlining deficiency reporting, repair quoting, and sales process reporting. Finally, speed up your billing process to reduce days to invoice to generate more cash flow for growth investments by automating as much of your billing processes as possible, especially when it comes to pricing contracts. So I know this has been a lot of information. So what should you do next? Well, first, check your email tomorrow. In it, you'll find a recording of this webinar and a link to the PDF version of the benchmark report that you can share with your team and kind of get that conversation going. Next, compare your company's data to the benchmarks to find the biggest opportunities for improvement, right? You might find that your days to invoice is just fine, but that you're way below benchmark on pull-through repair work. And so that should tell you very quickly what your area of focused action and opportunity should be. Now, pulling all of that data together can be pretty daunting. So if you're already a ServiceTrade customer, your ServiceTrade account manager can walk you through an account health review with a dashboard that pulls all of your company's data into the benchmark dashboard like this, so you can see where you stand against the rest of the market. And from there, you can actually deep dive with your account manager into each one and see underlying data that feeds up to say, okay, well, how often are we finding repair opportunities? What's our quote approval rate look like? How does that trend over time? So you can start to understand what's driving that metric. All right. So at this point, we'll open it up to some questions and try and answer as many as we can.
Hey, Sean. Hello, everyone. Sean, one of our attendees noticed that we didn't talk about a benchmark for margin. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, and so that's one thing we're really interested in exploring and might add in future benchmark study. But what a number I do want to share that I've been hearing, some numbers I've been hearing from a lot of, I wouldn't say a lot, a select few of extremely top performing customers. Two numbers, 50% gross, 25% EBITDA. I think, exceeding 40% gross and 20% EBITDA is doing really great. But I'm hearing from a few out there who are hitting the 50-25 zone, which is really incredible.
Jordan, there was a question about what we can do if we have a customer who is on a credit hold, has a balance on the account. Are there notifications or alerts that we can use to halt future service?
Yes, so there is a flag feature that you can do that alerts you to know that say, hey, we need to stop payment. Hey, they're behind on their payment, or maybe they're a disgruntled customer. But whatever that is, there is some alert that you can have in there that flags them or anybody who views that particular job or customer.
Great. Sean, can you explain more about why an on-time completion rate above 90% could be a problem?
Yeah, in general, it's healthy for a business like yours to have a backlog of work to pick and choose from so that you can always have the most optimal technician schedules to drive the most revenue protect. Because again, you have to think about this where the technicians are your scarce resource, right? That is your limiting factor to growth. So you have to optimize for those technicians to drive more revenue, protect more gross profit per labor hour. So by having a healthy backlog of work to choose from enables your coordinators, your schedulers, your dispatchers to grab the best work, the cream from the top. And ultimately, there, if you have to lose the worst customers because you can't get to them, that becomes acceptable, and you should go through an exercise of constantly upgrading your customer base to ensure that the cream always gets better.
I think we'll have time for one more question. And I wanted to get to this one about the technician capacity planner that you showed, Jordan. There was a question about where that is and where the information comes from.
Yes. So where it is if you were to go to the dispatch board within ServiceTrade and you toggle over from day view, there's a week view and then there's a month view. Once you get to that month view, right underneath there's where you can go from a kind of like an entire week. It's a little, I call it, looks like a stopwatch icon. If you click on that, that's where you will see the capacity tracker or planner that I was displaying today doing the on-time completion as well as the on the on-time completion, excuse me. And then from there, where you're actually getting that data from is due to your service opportunities or those services that that are happening over and over again that you've kind of preset ahead of time to help kind of just know what's ahead. And that's where that data is being pulled into.
All right.
Well, thank you all for joining us. Sean, Jordan, thank you all so much for showing us this great story today. It is a lot to consume, and we know that you are a competitive field and you love to look at these benchmarks and look at your own data. So like Sean said, please watch your inbox tomorrow for the report to come in, and then let us know how you measure up. Let us know what we can do to help turn you into a top performer. Until we talk again, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much.